Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Cryptenomics. Pretty exciting topic today. I just find it interesting. Between the recent Verge attacks, EOS vulnerabilities, even there was a Bitcoin Gold attack. There's been a lot of chatter around the industry about 51% attacks. There are other types of attacks, but today we're going to focus on 51% and really explain what they are because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. About what it really is, how the mining really works when that happens. So we figured we'd dive into it. But before diving in,
let's crack these bad boys.
Crack open a nice beer. And cheers. Let's get into it. So, now recently everyone's been speaking about Verge because they had their third attack on them. And as a result, I think even Pornhub said something, how they're like, wary about their partnership now.
Good on Verge.
Now, there has been some confusion. Verge did not have a 51% attack in the sense that people think. There wasn't someone dominating the hash power necessarily and abusing it in a double spend type of way. They actually had a vulnerability where they were able to change the timestamps on the blocks, which is also a very powerful
the manipulation that can happen as a result of that.
So if you can have the time stamps on the blocks be ahead a little bit, then you're always going to be ahead of the network, guaranteed, and you can create new coins. Anyways, let's dig into a 51% attack, explain what it really is, and I think there's some prerequisites also that people need to understand about blockchains and how they work. And blockchains do have pre-assumed conditions with how they work under certain circumstances. So a couple things to note is that if there's ever a conflict, right? So a blockchain, what is it supposed to be? It's really supposed to be a record of truth. It's like a book of records of everything that happened, all the history of all the transactions. Now, if there's ever a conflict of truth, right? If there's some miner saying, hey, this should be the next block on the chain, and there's someone else saying this, and there's two different versions of a chain that need to be reconciled, the miners or the network will naturally go with the longer chain because there's more hash rate behind it. They see it as being more secure, and it would make more sense that the longer chain, which is ahead of the shorter chain, would be the more accurate one. That's what you would assume without going too in depth with it. So to remember, it's good to remember that the network will always go with the longest chain initially until there's like a really hard fork that happens. I think that's the most important assumption to make with this. So, as far as I understand, and you can correct me if there's anything to clear up here, but a 51% attack is really when what happens is once you gain 51% hash rate of a network, you can mine the blocks faster. That's really what this is all about. Everyone should remember that mining is not about validating transactions as much as it is a race to mine the next block.
So 51%, you have preferred odds that you're going to get the next block, and that allows you to start mining the chain faster, get ahead, and thus, take advantage.
Exactly. And so in a 51% attack, what's actually happening quite literally is someone takes control of the network and they essentially fork the blockchain, right? So now there's the original Bitcoin blockchain, let's say, if someone's doing it on Bitcoin. There's the original Bitcoin blockchain, and then there's this miner who has his version of the blockchain, which is ahead of the public one. Upon forking the network and you're mining at your own chain, that means that you're actually creating coins faster than the old chain. And you can actually then broadcast those coins onto the public network. So miners do a couple things, right? Miners don't just mine blocks, they also broadcast. So first there's the mining in your own chain, but then they're doing the broadcasting function on the public chain.
Right.
So now you can buy a house, let's say, right? So let's say you mine a shit ton of coins on your private chain, and then you broadcast all these coins and you do a transaction. You buy a house on the blockchain on Bitcoin. That house is there. Then what will happen though is what will happen eventually is you're gonna have to propose your new blockchain and say this is the real chain, and then the network will naturally go with your chain because it's longest.
Right.
Once your chain becomes the real Bitcoin blockchain now, you never actually spent, when you bought that house, you never spent those coins on your private chain. You only spent those coins on the public chain. So now you like overrode that old chain and you have this new chain, and you could spend the coins that you spent on the public chain again on your new chain,
Right.
because they were never spent before.
So there is some clear financial incentive to launch 51% attack against a blockchain network, but it needs to be, I think it needs to be discussed. The motivations behind this are really malicious and destructive, not for profit. Because the reality is, in the grand scheme of things, while you may get away with $500,000, you're not really going to get, life-changingly rich where you're a billionaire from a 51% attack, because the result of a successful 51% attack will be the destruction of the blockchain. The trust in the chain will be gone. The value in the coin will plummet. So the motivation of someone who's really doing this, launching one of these attacks, is just destruction, just to cause chaos. Mm-hmm. So while there is some financial gain to be had, it's not really a get rich quick scheme or anything like that.
I agree. Oh, and I want to point out another interesting thing that you can learn from this. If you understand what this 51% attack concept, kind of a fun fact, I guess, that a lot of people misarticulate is that you can also learn from this that miners are not validating the coins. They're just validating the order of transactions happening. Right? Because if you were able to validate fake coins that don't really make sense or just generate BS coins, then that could be your attack. But as a result, you have to do this sort of double spend, because the miners are really validating the order of operations of transactions. They're not really validating the coin itself, or the transaction itself.
Yeah, definitely.
So, fun fact, miners really are validating the order of operations of transactions, not any coin in and of itself.
Yeah. So now, what protections do we have against 51% attacks? So the market price of a coin serves as a barrier to launching a successful 51% attack, because as the price of a coin increases, the cost of the hashing power is also going up. So the subsequent cost to launch a successful 51% attack becomes more and more expensive. So that's one, barrier to a successful 51% attack. And then proof of stake coins, I think, are some of the best suited to defend and protect and, prevent these attacks.
Why is that?
Well, because if you want to launch a 51% attack against the proof of stake coin or network,
it's the coins
you have to own
it's not
half
about
of the coins in circulation. So that is a challenge in and of itself. But if you look at a bigger coin that's proof of stake, so if Ethereum releases Casper and becomes proof of stake, the chances of someone launching a successful 51% attack against Ethereum are almost,
yeah, because now it's not a hashing power game like proof of work.
Right.
It's actually just owning them and proof of stake.
So how would one come to own 51% of the Ethereum in circulation without creating like mass hysteria in the process? The market would dump most likely, or pump rather, not dump. If someone was buying up that, significant quantity of coin, thus making, along the way, increasing that cost to achieve 51%. So I think that, proof of stake coins, that's one way that they're really good. But then if you start to look at how do you recover from a 51% attack, proof of stake coins are also better suited, because whereas with a proof of work network, you'd have to determine a last good state, like where the last time that the chain was where the last time the chain was, acceptable to the community, and then fork it from there. With proof of stake, all you have to do is create a fork that invalidates the attacker's coins, and then it's over. So proof of stake, I think, definitely is the best way to kind of prevent this specific attack. Now, we're not going to get into proof of stake versus proof of work here, I don't think, but that's definitely a win for proof of stake. Now, recovering from a 51% attack, we mentioned briefly, if it's a proof of work network, they're going to have to find that last good state. So if there was a sudden public attack, if some government organization suddenly, launches mining farms and they take control of the Bitcoin network and they have 51% and they crash the network, it would be pretty easy for the community to come to consensus as to when the last good state was. It was, the day before that government turned on its mining farm. That's a preferred scenario, honestly. In the event that someone was able to launch a more subtle 51% attack where it went unnoticed for a period of time, they could then be spending those coins, doing that double spend for a period of time, and actually have accumulated some wealth before it's discovered. And then determining that last good state is almost impossible because you really have no idea when it started.
Yeah.
So that I was doing some reading, and
if you roll back the chain too far, the genuine miners are going to get
right,
pissed
exactly,
because they wasted.
You definitely don't want to roll it back any further than you need to, because that will definitely discourage the community. So I think that's how you would really destroy a coin, is if you could successfully control 51% of a proof of work network. You don't advertise it. Don't become this public attacker. Just kind of lay in the shadows, kind of spending your double spend as you can. And then eventually you can come out and say it, prove it, and the coin will be over and you'll have actually made quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
Don't go out and do that.
Yeah, don't do that. And don't do a 51% attack anyways.
I think
we've been seeing people discuss online the morality and ethics behind a 51% attack and attacking these blockchains.
There's people who are
it's immoral,
justifying it, saying well, I'm not actively trying to launch 51% attack. It just happens to be
I'm just rich and I have a lot of hashing power.
Right, exactly.
And I like this coin. And also, that's not even the bigger thing. A lot of people are saying that they are morally okay with launching these attacks on these blockchains because they're saying, well, I'm not really stealing from anyone, right? I'm siphoning from this network. And if I siphon, let's say, $10,000, and then I bring those coins to Bittrex and I sell $10,000 worth, and the coin has an okay market cap, the chances are that you're not going to dump the price. The chances are that you're not really screwing anyone over. And the chances are that it didn't make any financial difference and you didn't actually steal from anyone. You're just siphoning from the network.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what are you doing? Once this becomes known that you're doing this, you're completely hurting this dedicated team behind this coin. And you're ruining the trust of their whole community. Yep. So there are definitely moral issues. It still is theft, right? If I go to an Apple store and I steal $10,000, it's not going to make a difference to Apple from their Apple store. But I'm still stealing. I'm not stealing from a person. I'm stealing from this network, I guess. It's similar. It's a little different, but it still is immoral. Let's not kid around.
Yeah, I mean, so the end result is definitely hurting individuals, but you're not. Yeah. It's negligible. A twisted mind can justify it and say oh, I'm just stealing from this big organization that has tons of money. But the reality is that the repercussions from that event will destroy that network and that organization, and then everyone, all the individuals who are invested in it, they're fucked.
Exactly. And also at that point, you're admitting that it's immoral, right? You're rationalizing. You're already admitting.
100%.
Yeah, you're already admitting if I stole $1 million, it'd be bad. But if I steal $10,000, it's not bad. So you're already admitting that any amount of money is some degree, some degree of badness.
If this was being stolen from an individual, it would be worse, but it's just from a company. I mean, you're rationalizing.
You're admitting that every dollar is some degree of badness. So it's interesting. Well said. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's just what degree are you willing to go to?
Yeah.
Hopefully 0. So yeah, Verge was not quite a 51% attack, just to clear that up, in the sense that we're explaining.
Right.
It was more of a different type of attack, timestamps. Which really has the same result, though. It has the same result. It's the same end because you're creating a longer chain.
So 51% attack is really this inherent vulnerability in blockchain technology. It just is. And I think that the big coins will evolve past where, it's a viable threat. As the networks become bigger and hash rate becomes more expensive, the reality is that no single individual organization is going to be able to pull this off.
And additionally, it snowballs against them, right? So let's say Bitcoin gets huge and it costs, actually right now there's a website that shows an estimate at how much it costs to do a 51% attack. Right now to do a 51% attack on Bitcoin would cost you about $530,000 to control the network for 1 hour. Now, if Bitcoin grows,
Does
and
it
grows,
explain what that cost per, like, is that just
it's based
electricity?
off
Is
of,
that hardware?
It's based off the prices at NiceHash.
Gotcha. So that, I mean, that's probably
It's pretty expensive then.
it is pretty expensive. You probably could do it
Cheaper
cheaper,
if you have your own.
but you also then, or, you know, it's a combination of costs where it's infrastructure, it's electricity, it's, you know,
Exactly, yeah.
the building that you're going to put all this fucking mining shit in.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm getting at is that it snowballs in the sense that the community becomes more legitimate, right? So right now, Bitcoin, there are people like, and just pieces of software and thought leaders like Andreas Antonopoulos, who is always on top of the status of the blockchain. So if a government came in and really spent one day $100 million to do some sort of attack on the blockchain, what would really happen is the thought leaders in the space and the block stream and the people really in charge of this shit would be aware of it quickly. They would do a hard fork, roll it back exactly where it needs to be. I'm very confident that they would be right on top.
So I agree.
So,
So
it kind of
that's,
snowballs sentiment, like the fundamental side of the industry snowballs against them too.
I agree, but also this is what we were saying before. Like, if it's that sudden, you know, public attack, then yeah, it's pretty defensible. But if it's a sneakier attack where it's not as public and, you know, the thought leaders in the space, the people who are watching the blockchain on a daily basis don't pick up on it, that's a bad situation. Like, that's the end of the crypto, that particular crypto.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately it comes back, this is a vulnerability. It's just an inherent vulnerability in blockchain. Whereas what happened with Verge was a vulnerability specific to the Verge code base, which is probably a steaming pile of shit in my opinion.
Yeah, nah, I would never have guessed that Dogecoin Dark would have vulnerabilities.
Dogecoin Dark.
So, the formerly.
If you
the
asked
name
me
of
if I'd
Verge.
rather invest in Dogecoin or Verge, I'd rather invest in Dogecoin.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I just think there was a lot of I think it's worth re-explaining it because some people, it's nice to re-explain things. So something to remember: networks will always go with the longest chain if presented with two different versions of truth. So in a 51% attack, what's really happening is you have 51%, you fork it. There's blockchain A, blockchain B. A is the original one, B is yours. You're mining faster, so your blockchain's a little longer. As you're mining faster, that means you're getting coins that haven't been found yet on the original blockchain. You then broadcast those coins on the public chain, buy some shit, do something, sell coins, whatever. And then you made your money. But you spent the coins that you mined on this chain over here. You never actually spent them here yet. Then eventually, after a couple blocks, you're going to present the network with these new blocks. They're going to go with your chain because it's longer. And then you have the opportunity again to spend the coins that were never spent on that chain, you broadcast it on the public chain, to spend them again. And that's why it's called a double spend. And then once again, that means that verifies the fact that miners are really validating the order of transactions and not the transactions themselves. Otherwise, you could just do fake transactions rather than being forced to do this double spend attack between two blockchains.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. You know, while we're talking about vulnerabilities, EOS, they discovered, one developer discovered around 8 vulnerabilities in EOS, deserving of bug bounties totaling on the order of $120,000.
In a week, right?
In like 7 days. So from the EOS HackerOne page, qualifying vulnerabilities for bug bounties must meet one of these criteria. I'm going to read these off for you guys. Cause node to crash via P2P plugin. Cause node to crash via HTTP. Send a contract into an infinite loop. Cause a contract to use a large amount of memory. Crash a node with a contract. Trigger unauthorized actions on accounts. Cause a contract to run for more than 10 milliseconds over deadline. So a couple of those in there weren't like, tremendously scary, but some of those are like huge fucking vulnerabilities. And to think that one individual spending a week of his time found 8 of them is pretty like wild. Like that does not speak highly of the quality of the EOS code base.
No.
And their mainnet was just launching, and it hasn't been a great week for EOS. But I just these projects that ICO on the Ethereum network only to launch their own competing platform, that fundamentally doesn't send a positive signal to me that that team can cut what needs to happen. Like they don't have the talent inherently to compete with Ethereum. So they're raising metric ass ton of money in order to pay people who can. I don't think that fundamentally that's the right mindset to unseat Ethereum. You need someone who, like Vitalik, has that mind, that natural talent.
Cardano.
So you have like a much more viable project is just like you said, Cardano. I'm forgetting the name of the individual behind that, but he is an incredibly smart dude.
Charles Hawkinson or something?
We've heard him speak on a few occasions, and he is very smart, and he wrote his code base from the ground up. And I think that the people, the minds that are going to seriously compete in this space will always do that. They're not going to leverage some other guy's tech in order to raise money to pay people to build what they imagine can exist.
It definitely makes a unique mind. It's funny, I saw an interesting article up. No point getting into this, but to blow minds even more, people, there's people saying that the next Satoshi Nakamoto isn't even working on a crypto. It's going to be something even like...
Yeah, probably true. I mean, again, it requires a very unique mind, someone who has that like raw intelligence.
Yeah, all the pieces had to come together in their life.
And also has a degree of altruism and, wants to do something to better the world, because...
You're not going to make bank right away.
If Vitalik's sole goal was to...
Make money.
Make money. He'd
be done.
Probably would not have succeeded to the degree that he did. He's very smart, but I think the reason Ethereum is where it is right now is because of the underlying altruism in that project, and trying to make the whole world better through this software product.
I agree. Completely agree.
And I can't begin to knock on Vitalik, but I think that the area he's lacking the most is experience. Just he's a very young guy. I think our age or younger. And there's just some things that you're not going to understand or know, no matter how smart you are at that age.
Yeah, you can't force wisdom.
Yeah.
But he's technically, logically very smart. But he could definitely use someone who can maybe set up some sort of, like in some ways, Neo's management team seems more...
Yeah, I was just about to draw that analogy. Like, there are things I don't like about a Neo. I don't like how, centralized it is right now, where the Neo organization controls all of the Neo nodes. But at the same time, the Neo organization would never allow EOS,
scam ICOs,
to raise money on its platform to then build its own competing platform. Yeah. That's just not good for anyone, honestly.
And I want everyone to soak that in, what Aaron is saying. What he's saying is that there are people out there who inspire to create a competing Ethereum platform.
This is what EOS did.
And what they're actually doing, though, is they haven't yet created their own platform that can support their own ICOs. So what they're doing is they're creating their own ERC20 token, and they're not that vocal about it, but they are ERC20 tokens that are on the Ethereum chain right now, but they're being branded as their own chain. And then eventually, just like what is happening with EOS, what's going to happen is they're going to launch their own chain, hopefully. And when they do, you have to actually go do it through an exchange, swap your ERC20 tokens for their real coin that's part of their protocol.
Which is
and
just,
then ultimately,
this is happening like now.
Yeah, and then ultimately they're going to dump all of the Ethereum that they raised from their ICO on the network and obviously just promote their own coin. Now, there's many of these happening at the same time on the Ethereum network that could really hurt their liquidity and hurt the price.
Yeah, we saw evidence of this last week. So there was, 200,000 or some ridiculous number of Ethereum moved from an EOS wallet to Bitfinex and then liquidated. Dumped the market like $200, the price of Ethereum. It was a big deal, and nobody quite knew why. And then some clever blockchain sleuthing revealed that it was, in fact, EOS selling off a ton of their Ethereum from their ICO. And I think that this is possibly the greatest threat to Ethereum, is all of these ICOs that are holding tremendous amounts of Ether and have no intention or no desire to see Ethereum succeed, and they actually intend to try and undermine it. So yeah, I think that all kind of tying together is a problem.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's a big issue, and I'm surprised that Ethereum is even allowing it.
Right, so that's what I was saying. Like, I think that the Neo would not allow that, and I think the fact that Ethereum does allow it and that ICOs are being allowed to run rampant right now the way they are
But ultimately,
is-
yeah, it's those administration type of calls that
it's a
Vitalik
factor
is
that
lacking in.
I think that he just didn't necessarily have the foresight in that particular area to see how that would play out. And I think that someone who maybe had a little bit more experience in business and just in general might have seen that coming a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that we're seeing that with Neo. And you know what? Maybe Neo didn't see it coming. Maybe Neo's just learning from Ethereum's mistakes. And if that's the case, good on them.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
But from a developer's perspective, just one more thing on EOS. If you're raising, as a developer, if you're raising money to go and build something, that sends me a very strong signal that you do not have the ability on your own to build it.
Correct.
So when I first looked at EOS, the very first time I was looking through their website and their FAQ, and I saw they were trying to build this platform, and yet they were issuing an ERC20 token, that was a huge red flag for me. That was just this. I'm not going to make a bet on a project where you've got a great idea and have no actionable proof or intangible proof that you can, act on it. It's been said before, investing in blockchain products is more like being a venture capital investor and investing in startups than it is investing in like traditional U.S. equities. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that about sums it up.
No, I agree. Yeah. Yeah, I think we should, as a next video, a lot of people are interested in how to attack blockchains. We can discuss there's race attacks, Finney attacks, other types of attacks that we can explain. If you have any questions, want any clarifications, let us know. Happy to answer.
Any ideas for new topics? We're all ears.
Yeah, so we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.